Hi, this is Max Kaiser, co-founder of Bitcoin Capital. I'm here with Simon Dixon, co-founder and chief investment officer of Bitcoin Capital. Simon Dixon, some interesting developments in the Bitcoin space. I just saw you on CNBC this morning, and it's funny the way that they positioned the story itself. It said that it's big banks at war with Bitcoin. So it's no longer a secret that the big banks have finally figured out that Bitcoin, as Jamie Dimon said, is going to eat their lunch, and they're at war. And they've poached a high-level defector as part of the code war, has now jumped ship and joined the bad guys. Talk about it.
Yes, there's been a lot of headlines, a lot of drama since our last update, Max. And Bitcoin Capital's in the middle of that. So investors are asking us what's happening, what's going on. So we recorded this video to give you a quick update. So the story is that banks have been developing their own blockchain. There's a syndicate of 42 banks called R3. And R3 have made some hires, and they strategically hired Mike Hearn, who's one of the developers that's been around Bitcoin for a long time, done a lot of stuff for Bitcoin. They made an announcement prior to announcing that they just hired Mike Hearn that Bitcoin has failed. And so Mike Hearn wrote this blog around all the problems with Bitcoin, but it was done in very dramatical fashion and it created a lot of uncertainty and fear investors and a 15% correction in the price.
Right. Well, Bitcoin is now entering a period where the political aspects are coming into focus. I think for the last few years, people have not understood that this was headed into a collision with the big banks and the political dimension of the big banks. They have the biggest lobbying effort in Washington, D.C. and around the world. You've got Blythe Masters from J.P. Morgan here in London creating her company, which is in the pocket of big banks. You've got R3 in the pocket of big banks. They want to use blockchain to reduce their costs, but they do not want to curb their fraud in any way. They just want to reduce their costs. So they attack Bitcoin because Bitcoin is an escape valve. It's an escape hatch. If somebody says, you know what, I don't want to participate in fraud, or like China and Russia and other countries are saying, world reserve currency, US dollar, by participating in that, we're funding wars. They don't want to do that anymore. So by offering an alternative, Bitcoin, you are defanging the worst predatory monopolists in the history of business, Wall Street banks, and they are fighting back now tooth and nail. They got this guy, Mike Hearn, to jump ship. Who knows what the inducement was, but he's a turncoat, but that was to be expected. I don't think anybody, when I was in Amsterdam a few months ago, the hackers there in the crypto space were complaining about Mike Hearn, saying the ecosystem, the development would be a lot better off if you got rid of Mike Hearn. He is the thorn in everyone's side. He's obviously a plant. He's obviously working for the terrorists in the banking sector. We need to get rid of him. So he did everyone a great favor by hitting the ejector seat and bouncing out of that space. And I think now the path is cleared, actually.
Well, yeah, I mean, he had two ways. He could have just walked away and joined the bank's blockchain, or you could just walk away, join the bank's blockchain, and make an announcement that Bitcoin has failed, which had the desired effect. It created 15% correction. It took $1 billion of market cap off Bitcoin, but then it bounced back the next day and it's up 5%. And as investors are starting to realize. So here's the headlines that investors need to know. Firstly, Bitcoin has not failed. There was a conference called Scaling Bitcoin, which Mike Hearn wasn't at, I was at, and other core developers were at, miners and all important people in the industry. And they were discussing the fact that now Bitcoin has reached record transaction volume. It's increased, it's growing so fast, and it had a boost towards the end of the year in price. And now what are we going to do in order to scale it so that it can handle the growth? Without going into the geeks of code, solutions were put together. There was something called segregated witness, and this is being looked at by all the important Andreas Antonopoulos and all the people that.
Look, even in Satoshi's white paper, he refers to the eventuality of scaling issues along these lines. This is nothing new, and as you point out, Hearn could have joined R3 first and then made this announcement or made this hate-filled screed rage quit afterward, in which case nobody would have covered it. It would have been just like, oh, here's a little punk whining like a baby, let's forget about him. But instead, he reversed it. He did the rage quit first, and even the New York Times was completely bamboozled by this, by putting that fact of the story at the end of a 2,000-word essay completely missing the point that there is a war going on. CNBC, to their credit, when they had you on this morning, and you'll be on the Kaiser Report later this week going into detail with Stacey Herbert on this. Everyone can look forward to that. Bitcoin Capital itself, money's still pouring in. People still see it as a way to protect themselves against financial terrorism. And that's still open, right?
Yeah. So here's what we're looking at for 2016. These are my opinions. And it seems like we've started 2016 with the worst stock market crash. We ended 2015 with Bitcoin being the highest performing currency. We had a little bit of drama, which has created some kind of correction. But you've got to think to yourself, what's going to happen this year? So, a lot of mainstream media and everything is talking about I think it was RBS, that said, sell everything, sell property, sell stocks, sell everything, keep cash. And so you've got to look at, there's going to be a lot of money that's got to have to find a home. So what are the asset classes that people are going to look at? Well, they're going to look at gold. So far, gold has proven to be a hedge against an inflation, but it hasn't been a hedge against financial uncertainty so far. There may be bigger plays going on with central banks that know things that we don't know, but it hasn't provided that so far. The next thing people are going to look at is cash, and people are going to be looking at which currencies to hold their cash in. Now, which ones, the more speculative ones, which ones are going to function when everything's failing, when everything's crashing? And Bitcoin at the moment is the only currency that works at scale, that's secure, that is not just a currency, but it's also a commodity, a technology, an invention, a currency, a stock, because it's essentially people investing in the invention of programmable money and how well that will perform.
Well, you make a good point there in terms of you have a collapse of global markets seemingly now at the beginning of 2016. There's literally hundreds of trillions of dollars at risk. Most of that will evaporate into the ether, and a good portion of that, we're talking trillions of dollars still, looking for a new home. Yeah, and there's only a few places that money can go. Gold and silver is a place that I think will attract some cash, but it's a $7 trillion market in gold. And so even a $1 trillion in cash infusion, it would have a great effect on price. But here you have Bitcoin, which is the entire market cap in the $5 to $6 to $7 billion range. And so if a few $1 billion, $20 billion comes knocking, looking for a secure place to park their cash, you're talking about a tremendous price move.
Well, remember, I think it was announced today that the top 1% now officially own more than in the rest of the world.
Half of the world's population wealth is equal to the top 65 people on planet Earth.
So you've got to look at what are these mega wealthy people going to do with their money when everything's failing? I mean, they could put it in treasuries, but what's going to be, government will be the last asset class that will go bust, because before that you'll have property, before that you'll have stock markets and every other type of asset class. So people are looking at putting money into treasury because they think that's the best bet of a bad bunch. But even if they just took a small percentage of that and speculated on a system that works when banks crash, when everything else is gone, then that's a significant portion of capital. And now remember, the banks have tried to put this headline out that Bitcoin's failed, but that's going to tether off, and we've seen that reflected in the price when it bounced back about 5%.
Yeah, as somebody remarked, this is the 88th time that the obituary for Bitcoin has been written. So I think that about covers it for this update on Bitcoin Capital. Max Kaiser and Simon Dixon for now. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep on mining.